Let's be clear, there is a crisis right now, but it's not because the southern border is open or because immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country, which the Republicans and their racist cult leader, Donald Trump, want you to believe. The real crisis
As for
is
words to be
one
taken down.
no, it is, he is not a current president.
The gentlelady will suspend until the motion is dealt with.
What were the offending words?
Would Mr. Cloud state the words?
Mr. Cloud, will you state the words?
She mentioned that Republicans were racist.
I didn't say that. I said racist cult leader Donald Trump, who is not a current president, so it is not engaging in
The
personality.
Republican members and their...
No, she's clarifying she's not referring to Republicans in general. She was referring to one individual who is not protected by the rules.
Absolutely. The words say, which the Republicans and their racist cult leader, Donald Trump.
Mr. Ranking Member, I don't think that you're the one to rule on this. I think the chair.
Here,
No, I was stating just the rule.
Let's hold for just a moment. The rules apply only to when you're engaging in personalities of specific members, so the comments are in order. The gentlelady can continue.
Generally, the people that are at the protest, we care. Those folks are showing up because they want to see something done about policing in this community, in this country. They want to stop the fact that every single year we have a rise in police killings and nobody is doing the actual work to fix it. And so by saying, hey, we're going to show up and put our bodies on the line, that and then turning that around to make it as though those are the folks who are violent. Those are the folks who are extreme. If you stop the police violence in this community, in this country, then nobody has to show up for a protest. Let me just say that. I wish my Republican colleagues were as concerned about Black and brown communities on the front lines of our climate crisis as they are about an appliance. Republicans are consistently against regulations that maintain workplace safety standards, enact gun control to keep our children safe in schools, and allow access to reproductive care. These standards are not a ban on gas stoves, but a way to move the nation forward and reduce health and climate risks to people and our planet while giving consumers more information and more options.
And I would yield one more time to the gentlelady.
Be in order.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The House will be in order.
The Republican conference is saying they are sending us home for 6 weeks without funding the government, that we have one bill out of 12 completed because extremists are holding your conference hostage. And that's not the full story. The extremists are holding the American people hostage.
This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. We are regulating indoor air pollution. The climate crisis is happening all around us, and Republican inaction is costing us lives. As lawmakers, we have a moral obligation to prioritize the health and well-being of every person across our country. I represent a community where the threat of climate pollution comes from both inside and outside our homes. In St. Louis City, Black children are twice as likely to test positive for lead in their blood than white children. St. Louis ranks among the highest across our country for rates of asthma, with rates significantly higher for Black residents than white residents. I can only imagine the number of my constituents who are unknowingly being poisoned by their gas stove in the state that it is without this proposed rule being in effect, especially young children, our elders, and people with disabilities who are disproportionately at risk for contracting respiratory illnesses. Let's not forget that many of these gas stoves are not owned by the residents of those homes, but often absentee or corporate landlords. That is a thing. We have a number of housing regulations in place to ensure that renters are kept safe. This also applies when we speak about keeping renters safe to the indoor air pollution, how that should be a top concern. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. Research proves that improving the energy efficiency of gas stoves and switching to electric stoves completely will save lives, will save money, and will save our environment. that there is a crisis right now, but it is not because the southern border is open or because immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country, which the Republicans and their racist cult leader, Donald Trump, want you to believe. The real crisis is one of irregular migration. People around the world are fleeing from extraordinary levels of violence, persecution, and natural disasters. These catastrophes that force people from their homes have been fueled by long-standing U.S. government policies supported by presidents of both parties. Every war we fund, every government we undermine, every blockade and sanction we impose on civilians, and every day we fail to address the climate crisis is another investment in the displacement of others. There is also a crisis of humanity. It is shocking how our political discourse reduces people, actual humans, real people, who are all too often forced to flee their homes to pawns whose lives and rights can be traded away for weapons or some kind of perceived political gain. It is devastating how little we seem to focus on the horrific conditions they are facing. Parents and children are suffering as they try to navigate our broken immigration system and are met with cruelty and confusion. In the face of this suffering, all GOP members of this committee can manage to do is shout at immigrants as if they aren't people. And then there is a crisis of logic. MAGA Republicans, but also some Democrats, want to pretend that a lack of enforcement is the problem, even though this administration has doubled the number of deportations between fiscal years 2022 and 2023, and even deported 18,000 families in that time frame. So unsurprisingly, this hasn't solved any of the underlying problems, but some folks seem to believe that if we double down on our failed policies of the past, somehow these problems will go away, but nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is that we will undermine our immigration system and make all the existing problems worse if we repeat the mistakes of the past. Failing to end our dangerous policies that fuel chaos abroad will only guarantee more people being forced to flee their homes and countries. Right now, Congress and the administration are signaling they are willing to use immigrant communities as bargaining chips for more war and more weapons. However, raising the credible fear standard and imposing violent enforcement policies like mass family separation and summary deportation would destroy our asylum system for a generation, would violate our obligations under international law, and ensure more chaos in the immigration system. The damage caused by this chaos and inhumanity is personal for me and my constituents. My office has seen a significant increase in immigration cases in the recent months. Each one shows the human dimension of this issue. A family fleeing the horrific violence in Sudan, a mother who can't take care of her ill child, a woman with cancer whose family members can't visit her, a doctor whose fiance can't live with her, a young man whose wife died and whose family members couldn't attend her funeral. Endless wait times for family members fleeing violence and persecution in Haiti and Gaza and elsewhere. We are doing the best we can as an office to help our constituents in St. Louis and their families face these crushing obstacles, but ultimately, Congress must act. Congress must legislate. We know what the solution is: building a just and humane immigration system and addressing the root causes of migration. That looks like expanding lawful pathways, using parole authority, increasing asylum case processing capacity, securing our authorization for folks who are already here, protecting our dreamers, ensuring that states and cities have the resources they need to process new arrivals, and ending support for war, blockade, sanctions, and other policies that disproportionately harm civilians. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for being here, Secretary Mayorkas. St. Louis and I are here today, as always, to ask hard questions about real issues. Secretary Mayorkas, I'm concerned that the department and the Office of Intelligence and Analysis in particular encourages the targeting of protesters, activists, incarcerated people, and progressive movements. For example, in 2020, under the prior administration, Intelligence and Analysis labeled individuals protesting police brutality and racial injustice after the killing of George Floyd as domestic violent extremists. And department leadership instructed officials to create and share intelligence dossiers about, quote, everyone participating in Portland protests, unquote, as part of a discredited effort to link protesters to a non-existent terrorism plot. And these issues still continue to this day. Secretary Mayorkas, Do you acknowledge that the department has referred to opponents of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, or what we call Cop City, as alleged domestic violent extremists and militants comprising violent far-left occupation? And that's just a yes or no.
Well, Congresswoman, a few things, I must say. First, I'm immensely proud of the men and women who work in the Office of Intelligence and Analysis under the superb leadership of Kenneth Weinstein. They do tremendous work in making sure the American people are safe and secure. I am familiar with activities in Atlanta that are lawful, and I am also familiar with activities to which you refer that are unlawful. And we do not condone violence. We do safeguard and protect the free expression of speech.
So what you're saying is that this alleged domestic violent extremists or militants that you're saying that you condemn that language and you condemn. I'm just trying to be clear, because we can't both sides it when people are actually being hurt, and I can speak to it as an actual activist myself, and I've been there. I've seen what actually happens to protesters and what actually makes the media and what actually makes the reports. So I just want to make sure that we're saying that are you saying you domestic violent extremists, because I have the report here, are you saying that you condemn that, or that is part of the work?
Congresswoman, lawful protest is a proud tradition in this country. There cannot be a connectivity between an ideology and the expression of that ideology through violent means. That is when we get involved to prevent violence. Individuals are free to express their ideologies, whatever we might think of those ideologies.
Okay, let me, I have limited time. Let me reclaim my time. Let me go to my next question. So are you aware that Georgia law enforcement officials have used those characterizations to support their charges of domestic terrorism against opponents of Cop City?
I am not, Congressman. I can't speak to state activity, state law enforcement. What I can do is speak of what we in the Department of Homeland Security do.
Because when we don't call it out, when we don't address it, that's what happens. And I get it. You're not a part of the state, and you can't tell the state what to do, or you're not, as intricately involved in that. But when we don't speak up to it and we know what's happening, then they are able to do those things, and that's what this report is about.
So, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do our job through the next weeks and months. We invite all to come to work like we have come to work, to try to come to an agreement, not just to vote no, but to come to an agreement to solve these problems, to pass these bills. If both sides won't, we still will do that work. And I would yield one more time to the gentlelady.
Be in order.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
Are those even words strikable?
The gentlelady from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Leader, we are going to continue to stand in this country for some basic principles. That we are sent here for the American people. That we are sent here to defend their freedom. That we are sent here to grow an economy that isn't just for the wealthy and well-connected, but is for the American family. That's the work we're doing. That is the basis of the great economic news coming out, and we are going to continue that fight. We hope that you will say no to extremism, to hatred, to bigotry that is put into these appropriation bills, and say yes to solutions and fairness for the American people, and to build an economy where they can see themselves. Funding our government is our basic job.